Number 9, they want cosecant of 4 pi over 3. Well, I need to know where's 4 pi over 3. How many degrees is that? What are we talking about here? 4 pi over 3. If we were to change that into degrees, how much is that? What is pi over 3? How much is that? 60 times 4. So if I think about degrees, we're talking about 240 degrees, right? So 240, it's on the third quadrant, isn't it?
Yes.
This is 180, plus how much more to get to 240? This is 180, and then we need 60 more, right? So this is 60. So we look at the reference angle. So it's 60. And then I look look for my sides here. The adjacent would be how much? -1. And the opposite would be negative square root of 3 over 2. And the hypotenuse? You know what? Just square root of 3. Because I'm dealing with just -1. If I were to be dealing with the 1/2, then I would do that. But ahorita just the square root of 3. And then the hypotenuse is 2, right? Okay. So they want cosecant. The cosecant, that is just the reciprocal of sine, right? Sine is opposite of the hypotenuse, so cosecant would be hypotenuse over opposite. So hypotenuse is 2. Opposite is negative square root of 3. So that is 2 divided by negative square root of 3. But then you rationalize. And the answer would be -2 square root of 3 over 3, which is C. I got cosecant, which is opposite over hypotenuse. Hypotenuse over opposite. So hypotenuse is 2. Opposite is negative square root of 3. So when you get this, you need to rationalize. So it's 2 times square root of 3, square root of 3 times square root of 3. So it's -2 square root of 3 over 3. Got it? Did you understand? Yes? Okay, great. Number 10. What about cosine of 150? Who knows that value? What are the coordinates at 150 degrees? What's that? You mean negative square root of 3 over 2? Okay. And then 1? 1/2? If you go like that? Okay. So since you want cosine is the x, so the answer is negative square root of 3 over 2. And that's it. What about secant of 120? Again, we need to know the unit circle. 120 should be this angle here. So the reference angle is 60. So the coordinates of this point is -1/2, -1/2, comma, square root of 3 over 2. And they want secant, which means that they want the reciprocal of cosine. And since cosine is the x, so the reciprocal of -1/2 is just -2, which is B. The number 12, what about cosine of 180? Well, the 180 is a point that is on the x-axis on the left side. Give me the coordinates of that point. This is 180. What are the coordinates of that point 180? -1, comma, 0, isn't it? So if it's cosine is which letter?
X.
The x coordinate.
-1.
So that's -1. So on your test, I could ask you for tangent, or I could ask you for secant or cosecant. Just keep in mind that tangent, it's y over the x. And then cotangent is x over y. Sine is a y, okay? And number 13 is kind of like the quiz. So you want cosine positive, Cosine is positive on the first and on the fourth quadrant, so we eliminate the second and the third quadrant. You want tangent to be negative, so it cannot be on the first quadrant because that will be positive. Then cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So adjacent is 2, hypotenuse is 5. So we need to find the missing side. So how much would be the missing side? Well, the square root of 5 squared minus 2 squared, which is 4, and that would be 21. But then keep in mind that that's going down, so it's negative a square root of 21. So if you want sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So it would be negative square root of 21 over 5. And that is D. And then 14 was the amplitude of that problem? This is 2. Absolute value of negative 2 is 2, so it's B. And then number 15, they want the period. Okay, the formula for the period is P equals 2 pi divided by B, absolute value of B. So this is 2 pi divided by, what is B in the function? Is 1/2. So when you divide by 1/2, that is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal, right? Which is 2 over 1. And that is 4 pi. And that is D. Yes. Then number 16 is describe the transformation. Okay, well, I have a 3. The 3, it's a vertical stretch, right? By a factor of 3. So it cannot be A. Vertical stretch by a factor of 3, it seems like this is right. And it seems like this is right. Now the negative, how is the negative going to affect the graph? This negative. What is that? Reflected over the what? Over the x-axis. Okay, so then reflection across the x-axis. So E could be this one. E could be this one. And it could, oh, it cannot be D. So far as that. Now what about the 8? How is that affecting the graph? It's a what? It's not a stretch. It's a shrink. What type of shrink is that? It's horizontally, that's right. So that 8 turns into 1/8, and then you look at that. So it's a horizontal shrink by a factor of 1/8. Horizontal shrink by a factor of 1/8. So that makes a difference between B and C. So it's C. Careful with that. Number 17. What's the answer for 17? Which one? Letter C. If you look at letter C, it says a horizontal stretch by a factor. There you go. Horizontal stretch by a factor of 5 over pi. And that is right because, see, this number, when you get the reciprocal of that, is 5 over pi. And that's more than 1. That's why it's a stretch. So it's horizontal stretch by a factor of 5 over pi, vertical stretch by 6, and that would be this one. And then reflected across the x-axis, so it is C. Good job. And now let's move on. Last page.